I don't want everyone to be black-pilled here.
Oh, okay.
I want you to see this story from Bloomberg.
Oh, good. Yes.
Yes, nice.
Thousands protest in Prague over energy crisis.
Interesting.
Demonstrators gather to protest against the government in Prague. I think in Italy, they were burning their energy bills. Is that Italy?
My.
UK doing the same thing.
UK, take a look at this. Protests against the Indonesian government's 30% gas price hike are in full force. Watch as protesters try to break down a wall of police officers in riot gear.
This is
Messing around.
apolitical.
Yeah,
That's
this
right.
is bipartisan.
So what I mean to say is, you know, people won't stand for this. And I don't believe Barack Obama or Bill Gates or any of these people. They are not trustworthy people. They come to me as a young man and say, "Good sir, urban liberal, we have a climate crisis at hand." And I say, "Really? Tell me more." And they say, "That's right. There's too many people." Makes sense, doesn't it? Deer get overpopulated, birds, turkeys, pigs, they can overpopulate, right? And I'm like, yeah. And they go, "Well, we got a problem. We can't just kill people. So we have to work together to reduce our energy use, reuse and recycle." And I'm like, yeah, that all makes a lot of sense. And they're like, "Now you get to it. My private plane is waiting to my beachfront property." And I'm like, well, hold on there a minute.
Second.
Hold on. I sacrificed, and then you bought beachfront property in Martha's Vineyard. These people are full of it. If they really cared about this stuff, they wouldn't be doing the things they're doing. No, but I think the reality is that they want to preserve what they have. They probably are worried about overpopulation and political instability. But the reality is, if we can get you to sacrifice, we get to keep our private jets.
Yeah.
So when they try to implement these control mechanisms, it's like you mentioned, Ian, they want to control the energy you get access to, because by limiting it, it makes it easier to control you. If only the wealthy elites have access to the internet or access to these, flying cars or whatever, they're an advantage over poor people and they can more easily control them. So now what we see is people are protesting and rising up saying, we do not agree with this. And that's what we need to see. Because if people just lay down and accept this, then you're all going to be pod people, basically sheep or chickens.
Internet's kind of helped us to smash class systems. Like there used to be the elites and the plebes, or the plebs, at least. And all through society, there's been better men and everybody else. Whatever in the Americas, there were the better men that made the government. But I think people are, not everybody, but more willing to represent themselves.
What Tim is saying is reminding me of the criticism of the North America Free Trade Agreement. It was like, here's what we're going to do as a collective, US, Canada, Mexico, and part of the environmental policies were like, we're going to reduce carbon and do whatever. And Mexico never reduced their carbon emissions. And so it was like, wait, we said we were all in this together. And it was like, but why are we staying in this agreement, in this partnership that's not working? I feel like that's the same thing that these people are saying. Like, we rely on you to protect us, and you are swearing allegiance to a system that is causing us to suffer. Like, you are supposed to put our interests first.
Right. They're realizing their public servants are not serving them anymore.
not at all.
And that there is a clear, I think the class divide is getting just so abundantly clear, especially through the internet and independent journalism. Like, if we weren't talking about this and these independent journalists weren't talking about this, nobody would know that all these separate protests are happening right now. But now we're getting videos coming out and different people are jumping on the movements. In the Netherlands, when that started, sooner or later, France jumps in, Spain jumps in, because they all know this is going to be a collective fight.
I mean, it was the same thing with the Freedom Convoy, right? We saw it happening in Canada, and people were like, "Oh, wait, yeah, I don't want this either. We're gonna act." And you didn't see it modeled as heavily anywhere outside Canada. I mean, people carried out to a certain extent, but like that reminded everyone that like you don't have to lay down and conform to what's going on, especially if it's harming you.
I think it's funny. I remember the Arab Spring. You had people using Facebook and Twitter to organize mass protests in these Arabic nations and then, overthrow their governments. Egypt did it twice. And then we start seeing that with Occupy Wall Street. People start organizing and protesting. Occupy, I think, got co-opted by, special interests. But the ability to use social media to organize and reject these centralized control systems is extremely apparent. And now they're desperately trying to put a stop to it. They have to ban people like Alex Jones. They have to silence as many of these voices as possible. And they first started going for big names. Alex Jones, for instance, Smiley Yiannopoulos, Laura Loomer. And then they started going after the smaller accounts because they were like, hey, maybe we can do it that way. Go after 1 million small accounts that aren't big enough to make a splash if they get banned, as opposed to the big one that makes a big news cycle if you do ban. So that's the strategy now.
Well,
the other thing, obviously, is shadow banning and, algorithmic manipulation.
The second benefit that I heard to them is, you ban these people, and if you're saying like, oh, they hold extreme views and they get purged, they look for an alternative, right? So Andrew Torber talked about like Gab was not a inherently political alternative to Twitter, except that they banned all of the extreme right-wing users first. So they were like, well, we'll go to Gab. And so that gave the platform a natural leaning, even though that wasn't how he started it. Then you can have anyone at Twitter be like, well, what are you going to do? Join that crazy extremist platform? It siphoned off society and made it so you can point directly where you should not go next.
The internet is very powerful. I mean, like, look at China and what's happening there right now. There's protests erupting all over China because people can't get their money out of the banks, but they have such a stronghold on social media and the information that you're allowed to get out to people that it's so hard to stage a protest.
Yeah,
It's
it makes
so
me always
hard.
want to be like, who is getting banned first? Because whatever they're doing, maybe I don't agree with it, but I want to know. Because if they're getting purged first, just be aware of it. Like, why are they getting purged?
Well, they do a lot of things. Somebody commented already that, we've got 40,000 people listening to the show right now, concurrent viewership. We're not trending on YouTube.
Yep.
When you search for it, you can't find it. And it's election season, so we knew this was going to happen.
Yep.
But unsurprising.
Has it always been that way with this show? Like, did you ever trend on YouTube? I can't remember.
I think yes. Early on, we did trend several times, I'm pretty sure. And then all of a sudden one day, I remember Timcast IRL, you couldn't search for it on Google anymore. You would take the title verbatim, put it in Google, and Facebook would come up instead. And it was just funny. And then it was after like a year or so, all of a sudden, I mentioned it on the show. The next day, we reappeared in search. But I think it was more that they realized it was so overt, people were catching on to their suppression. Right now, I think it's funny because we put out a song last week, everybody knows at this point, I guess, and it was trending number 23 on YouTube, which is funny because this show gets more views and it never trends.
It's politics.
But this is the point of the culture war. Putting out music is apolitical. Boy, are they really salty that we did that and succeeded at it. They're freaking out.
Some are, but it was a good song, so they get that.
Well, it's like overwhelming thumbs up and positive, but the corporate press is losing their minds.
When it comes to adminning social networks, politics is kind of a risky admin because if you decide to let politics run on the front page of your social network, you're basically taking a political stance as a social network administrator, whether you want to or not. So I used to put that stuff in its own bucket. Like if you want politics, you got to go look for it. I'm not going to push it at you. I'm pushing, letting entertainment or what. And it's like, that's a dirty surface level way to go, but politics is really dirty too. And I don't think that just because someone's got the loudest voice necessarily means that everyone should be looking at it.
People want power.
Well, here's a question. Are left-leaning people ever trending on YouTube? Do you guys keep up with that stuff?
Yeah.
Do you see stuff?
Yes.
Well, I don't know about prominent...
Like overtly political?
Yeah, I don't know about that. If
Yeah.
you look at it, it's usually music and like Mr. Beast.
No,
Okay.
so
Yeah,
every
Mr.
single
Beast, of
time
course.
I turn on my smart TV, it's on YouTube and it's on the Young Turks. Every time.
Well,
it doesn't matter what
yeah,
I
because
do.
Very
The Young
maybe.
Turks are an approved YouTube TV station.
Right.
Like you get YouTube TV and they're a channel. You can
Why are we a
watch.
channel?
Yeah, what the heck? What's
That's
going
a good
on
idea.
here?
It's a no-no.
Well, they have 24-hour coverage, I'm pretty sure. Like they have something running on reruns on like a live stream for a
realize
channel.
that.
So we can have a whole
Yeah.
show where I just vamp for an hour.
Well, I mean, we're getting there.
Lo-fi.
We have Pop Culture Crisis 3 to 5. We have Timcast IRL 8 to 10. We got to start filling these time slots with other
amazing.
shows.
Right.
We're going to be
Great.
launching the Conspiracy Show with Shane Cashman, which is like a call-in show. It's not going to be live though, but we could air it in a time slot and then maybe eventually get a 24-hour rolling live stream.
Does Young Turks do a website where you pay $10 a month and get their
Yes.
stuff?
Yep.
Oh, okay. So they're
They've
doing
been doing it for a long
both.
time.
Interesting.
I think we have more. I think we're bigger than they are, to be honest. I'm not sure.
I see a lot of left-leaning, not always like a politician or a commenter, but I do see a lot of presentation of, it seems like fun internet content, right?
Yep.
Like rank all these people for
But
like
also-
best fashion. But it's always, you have to look at the people. They have certain ideologies. They'll talk about how they don't like certain things. And it's never from the conservative perspective. It's always, and I think that's partially because YouTube has flagged, let's say, left-leaning culture as mainstream culture.
Yeah.
It's moving us towards a left-leaning spectrum when we know that's not actually accurate for most of America.
Exactly. That is why I started making videos. I was just sort of a passive user of social media, but then I started realizing how they curate the content based on your demographics and what they know about you. And I started getting all this stuff about Black Lives Matter and the black struggle and the feminist struggle. And I thought, is there nobody to counteract this on social media? And of course they are, but they're just getting throttled left and right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm going to save something for the next 17, 20 minutes to give a quick update on the culture war issues. So I'll save it. But yeah, the issue with Facebook and Twitter is algorithmic. And early on, what happened was people who ran these big tech companies were naturally left leaning. they think they're the majority, so they would ban what they thought was not normal. It's literally exemplified in that meme where it's like the left and the right, and Bernie Sanders is placed in the middle, and there's nothing on the left, and it's like, watch this space. And they're like, it's like, dude, Bernie Sanders literally wants the people to own percentages of corporations. That's socialist. Like, overtly. If you think he's a centrist, you're in a cult. But they do. They think I'm a middle of the road person, and Bernie Sanders is in the middle of the road. It's like, no, he's not.
Yeah,
by no metric, not by left and right progressive like cultural standards, and not by economic standards. He's left. He's fairly far left, actually.
Yeah.
But they think they're in the middle, so they ban you.
Well, it's the tech. You're totally right. It's tech executives as well as the area that they're in, right? So if we think of Hollywood and Silicon Valley as similar areas, both those industries are dominated by people who are already naturally left-leaning, and then they walk outside and their kids have friends at school who aren't in the industry, and they're also left-leaning, and then it gets reinforced over and over again. It's why I'm so interested in businesses like Daily Wire setting up in Tennessee, like businesses that want to produce content, especially now that the internet gives us that flexibility, who settle in places that are not these centralized, echo chambers. They're physical echo chambers where people all sort of think the same thing.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.